Hey there, athletes. Coach John Ferry here from Team Wilpers. Excited to welcome you to the Week 4 athlete briefing for our half marathon extension program. So as always, let's do a quick Week 3 review. So some goals for this week here were to return to peak volume after the unload. We wanted to work sub-threshold and threshold energy zones. We want to continue to dial in that half marathon pace as we get closer and closer to race day. And we want to log another good quality long run here at the end of the week. So my secondary always reminder, make sure to keep logging into that website. We're getting close to the end here. But you want to keep going on, checking that box, saying that you did the workout. The factor still remains that getting a 100% completion percentage is your best shot at success. So keep going in, go for that 100%. If that 100% is gone, that's okay. We want to get as close as humanly possible. Carry that on to next time and go forward again down the road. So go in, check your box. So now onto our week 4 workouts. Run number 1, 60-minute easy. So another one of these, just adding on, keeping our volume nice and high. We want smooth and steady from start to finish over the scope of that 60 minutes. Run number 2, 45-minute half marathon pace interval run. It's 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off, 10 minutes on, 5 minutes off, 5 minutes on. So by the end of it, we're looking at 20 minutes of half marathon pace over the scope of this workout. Last week, we talked a little bit about those progressive intervals, having pace ranges and being a great workout to be at this part of the training cycle. This is even more specific of a workout. This is a great opportunity here, a week and a half out from the race, to have your last real opportunity to have extended time at half marathon pace. So hopefully you can continue to get dialed in, move closer and closer to finding that half marathon pace you're comfortable with. I mentioned this 20 minutes of time spent at half marathon pace. That is much shorter than the scope of a half marathon. So if this workout feels incredibly intense, going at the paces that were prescribed based on your 20-minute distance test, this might be a great opportunity to adjust your pace expectations, which doesn't mean you need to reset your zones at all. It means you need to reset your pace expectations for the race. And this would be a great opportunity to ignore some of the pace zones and the half marathon pace that's written in your portal, and to actually start to practice and go after the pace that you intend to run your race. What is a pace that you feel you're capable of holding and sustaining for 13.1 miles? You will, hopefully by this part of the process, have more answers than question marks. But if you have question marks, this is your best last opportunity to figure it out before race day, which is where you don't want to have question marks. You want to be at the starting line feeling very confident and comfortable about getting to your race pace and being able to hold it for 13.1 miles. So this is here as an opportunity to get one more half marathon pace practice in, especially in extended periods of time before we kind of dial it back down next week, getting ready for our race weekend. Run number 3, our long run. So put kind of a little bit more kind of a choose your own adventure here for the long run based on some of the feedback last time around. So the long run, the ranges go all the way from 8 to 12 miles based upon how you're feeling, what your experience with the distance is, what your comfort with the distance. Regardless, it is very, very, very important on this kind of last key long run before a race weekend that the effort remains very, very light. The last thing you want to do is waste your good race on your final training run going into it. In particular, because the training effect window is closed by next weekend. So that long run can't positively impact you any further. It can negatively impact you if you overdo the workout. It can certainly negatively impact you, but your training window is closed. So why do we have it on there? Why do we keep a long run, especially 10, 12 mile long run? And the answer is it's a confidence run. That's what we want from the next weekend, is for you to walk away from that long run feeling comfortable and confident. You want a last opportunity to practice your morning nutrition, your intra-race nutrition, your race kit, all the things that go into the race. This is your last opportunity. So if you feel more comfortable with 8 miles, wonderful. If you feel more comfortable with 16 miles because you're a high volume monster and you usually put in 20 miles in the weekend, also wonderful. And if you're carrying any sort of ache, pain, illness, etc., and you need to reduce it even further, also wonderful. Once again, this is something we want you to walk away knowing that you had more to give and hopefully feeling really ready to race 1 week later. So there's no right or wrong in terms of how much mileage, how little mileage. This is one of those kind of moments you really have to fall back on your training history, on what feels comfortable. But one more time, just to belabor the point here, is you want to walk away from this workout feeling fresh, feeling like you had a lot more to give and ready to race 7 days later. So whatever that means in terms of your training, find that number, and that's what we want for next weekend. Week 4, photo challenge, full focus. We're on a theme here. So as we've discussed in the past, this week is about staying focused and walking away feeling what? Confident. So share a photo or story about how you execute your final training before a race week. Make sure to tag @TeamWhopers, @TeamWhopers Run and please tag #TeamWhopers So some questions that came up from the group this week. So coach, could you go over some form cues for running downhill? I have a moderately hilly half coming up and I am not confident in my downhill form. Yes, happily. So running downhill is different. It is technically, it could be a little bit faster. A lot of people have issues with it. A lot of people feel like they have kind of negative impact or negative results in their body from downhill running. So the thing that I try to stress as much as possible in my athletes is to maintain high turnover on the downhill. So you want to take that cadence you have on the flat and the uphill, you want to make sure to translate it to the downhill. What people tend to do, a lot of people tend to do, is their cadence drops, they start to get these long loping strides going on the downhill, stride length opens up, which puts a ton of extra impact on the body. And your quads take the brunt of that impact on that downhill. The second kind of piece of that pie, I think we've talked about in the past at some point, so what you don't want is to heel break your momentum. This also happens all the time. In essence, this is taking your upper body and bringing it a little bit backwards, which kind of makes sense if you don't want to fall down the hills to bring your upper body a little bit backwards. But what that tends to do is make that heel the point of impact with the ground. And when that heel is in front of you, it is then literally breaking your momentum as you're going down the ground, going down the hill. It's going to add added impact to the body. It's going to slow you down by actually providing a break. You want to take your upper body and just come a little bit forward, kind of leaning into the gravity, hoping to pull you down to the bottom of the hill. The final, maybe the most important thing that you can do in real time when running on hills, because we don't have a ton of practice time between now and then. So what you want to do in real time is really listen to your footfalls. Are your feet slapping the ground on the downhills? Do you feel huge thuds? That's not great. What you want to do is go back, try to really focus on making sure you have that nice high turnover. That high turnover is going to hopefully put you a little bit more of a mid-foot landing. It's very unlikely you'll go all the way to a front foot landing on the downhill like that. What you want is a mid-foot landing. You want nice, soft footfalls. So you want to kind of think about your body being water coming down the hill. You want to be using the momentum of the downhill. You want to be kind of falling a little bit into gravity, and you want to be turning over rapidly in order to distribute that weight, stay on the midfoot. So those are ways to hopefully move slowly down, or not slowly down the hill. Those are ways to hopefully move smoothly down the hill. But really, really, really listen to those footfalls. So if you're a headphone runner, this is a great time to pull those things out. This is one of those moments you can, the people who are running without are much more dialed in to the sound of their feet on the ground. And that is an important cue for downhill running. Hopefully that helps. Next question was, what's the ideal corral to start a race in? I have a crowded half marathon coming up, so I think most of us are going to be stuck at the pace of the nearby pack. Should I start at my half marathon pace and hang on, or start a bit slower and hope to not get stuck in traffic if I want to go faster? So I'm going to kind of a little bit of a two-parter here. So let's start with corral. So as best as possible, I think you want to be seating yourself or try to be seated in the corral of your appropriate pace. And there are a couple of reasons here. So one, if you try to seed yourself up to try, let's say to eliminate some starting line traffic. It's very, very easy to get a little bit caught up in the race start. Everyone around you is technically running faster. They are probably going to push you to run a little bit faster. And I think what we talked about a little bit over the course of the time, and what is most certainly true, is you can make a lot of big mistakes early in the race. So if you get carried away with a pace range, and because you're going out with runners that are too fast and you end up running that first mile too fast, first 2 miles too fast, that can really negatively affect the rest of the run. So seating yourself back a little bit is going to help, or not back, seating yourself appropriately is going to help that a little bit. Also, not to pick on too many people, but when you seed yourself up like that, you have the potential to negatively impact the people who have seated themselves appropriately in that corral. So we always want to be, setting ourselves up for success, but we certainly don't want to be negatively contributing to someone else's day in the same way that you don't want to be negatively contributed to as either. So try as best as possible to seed yourself appropriately. Some of the pros of accurate seeding, kind of to the contrary of what I was talking about before, is people should be starting your pace. So it should be a little bit more of a controlled race start. It limits the opportunity to have a really, a fast couple miles, which sets you up for a tough second half of the race. You also can look around. You can kind of get a gauge of who's running my pace. Who might I run with over the scope of this 13.1 miles? You don't have to buddy up to them if you don't want to. You could. But I'm sure other people have had this experience in the past of even big city races where you see 4 or 5 people in the starting corral and several hours later, you're still right next to them. So that's a good opportunity when you seed yourself appropriately there to really pick some, some faces and jersey types, etc., where you're like, I'm going to stick with these people over the course of the race. And also, these big city races in general, but races of most sizes, there can be some slowdown at the start. This is a long race, 13.1 miles. There's a lot of opportunity for hard running. So what is usually also hard at these big city races is warm-ups. Because of the corral system, you have to be in a corral at a certain time. It closes, then it compresses, then they move you forward. The starting gun goes off, and it's 15 minutes before you still get to the starting line. So you're not really getting much of a proper warm-up going into this. So basically plan that into your race strategy. I would plan the first mile, maybe even 2 miles, to be a bit of an extended warm-up. So to kind of go back to your question of, do you start half marathon pace and try to hold it, or start a little bit slower and speed up? If you're in a big city race, I would absolutely use that first mile or two to plan to be a little bit slower. I would use it to have an extended, bit of a chance to warm up. And then by the time I'm hitting the 2 mile marker, I would hopefully be settling into my pace. Still, by the way, with 11 1/10 miles of running ahead of me, so I have plenty of opportunity to have a great race day, even with a little bit of a slower start. So, as I mentioned, plan it into your race strategy. Next question here was, for the last 2 to 3 weeks, my legs have felt like they are hauling lead shoes. I have tried soaking, massaging with the gun, yoga, nothing is working. If I skipped a long run, would that have a huge impact on my training? I don't want to die trying to do the long run the following week. Yes, no one wants that. So this residual fatigue absolutely can happen. It has probably happened to many of us over the scope of time. And what I really think about when I think about what this description here is a muscle that over the course of weeks and possibly months at this point, it's potentially been overworked, overtaxed. It's potentially swollen, gently strained, and in essence, something needs to be done. It probably needs a bit of a break in order to get back to full health. So there are kind of 2 ways that I would initially try to navigate this. And depending upon your racing history, just reducing pace, maybe eliminating intensity, taking it easier, a little bit just slower run, that might be enough. If you have a long running history and you tend to be pretty resilient and bounce back, just eliminating that intensity might work. If that doesn't work, and probably the more, especially with the timeline that we're on right here, is eliminating volume. I mean, just reducing the amount of work is probably going to be pretty important right now in order to allow your body to rest up and heal. So as always, working with a sport-specific PT to get the issue properly diagnosed and like a treatment pattern is the best course of action. So you can do that. It's not too late in your training cycle to try to see somebody and try to get a little bit of professional guidance, very skilled expertise there. So you asked about the negative impact of missing a training run. And so there is some, we're still in a training window. So if, miss a long run, there's going to be, a little bit of a loss of fitness. However, there's also a negative impact by going out and doing a run on a body that's overly taxed, overly stressed, etc., and putting yourself deeper into a hole. So you have to really, know your body, know where you are. And if this is an issue that's been going on 2 to 3 weeks at this point, certainly rings true to me. If I were making a recommendation to one of my athletes, we'd be going into a heavy rest phase where we'd be probably reducing volume and intensity until their body felt healthy enough and ready to go. So at this point of the training, the best thing we could possibly do for you is to get you healthy, rested, and ready to run in a couple weeks. And if that means barely running between now and then, it's not ideal, but I would take that trade-off 10 times out of 10, as opposed to pushing you through the workouts and having you kind of limp up to the starting line. I would always rather have an athlete that's gently undertrained and fully healthy than someone who has hit every single workout and is just kind of pulling themselves up to the starting line. It's going to be a tough race day for that athlete. So that's what I would focus on between now and then. Everything you need to do to get yourself healthy, rested, and ready to go for race day. It's going to set you up for the best possible chance of success. And you'll have to kind of live with the fact that there's a little bit of a training loss in there from not doing the runs. That's okay. One more time. We want you healthy and rested at the starting line. That's actually priority one of all of our training, is to be ready to race on race day and healthy and ready to go. So rest up, listen to your body, take care of yourself. Well, friends, that is all for week 4. So as always, it's a pleasure to be with you here on Friday evening. I can't wait to be back next week for our final race week number 2 briefing. Everybody have an amazing week 4.